Hi, and welcome to Mrs. PM Reads. Yes, this is Cora's little tale here still. We are continuing in our story, Zoo, by James Patterson and Michael Ledwidge. We will be in we just switched to book 3. Well, yes, book 3. We switched kind of in the middle of the last video, entitled Home Sweet Home. And we will begin in chapter 35. In the last video, Natalie stopped in to check on Attila, the chimpanzee, who's acting very strange and obnoxious. And Chloe and Oz land in the United States. So here we go with chapter 35. The Rockford Hotel, where our meeting was scheduled to take place, is situated in a rundown, slightly sketchy area of southeast DC, across the water from Buzzard Point. We checked into separate rooms and dropped off our things. I showered and used the quick moment of peace and solitude before the meeting to call Natalie. It was early afternoon on a Wednesday, and I was pretty sure she was off work at the moment. Her phone rang until I got her voicemail. "You've reached the voicemail box of," said a robot, and then a pause, and Natalie's bright bell of a voice carefully saying her own name, Natalie Shaw. "Please leave a message after the tone." "Hi, Natalie," I said into the void, looking out the hotel window at the Potomac. "I'm back in the States. I saw your email. I just wanted to talk things out. I'm in DC right now, but I'll be back in New York tomorrow. I hope. Let me know what's up." In fact, I was mainly worried about Attila. It had been almost a week since I'd left him. I hadn't heard back from Mrs. Abreu either. I hoped he was all right. I had work to do. "Are you sure we're in the right place?" Chloe asked as we entered the shabby hotel ballroom. The carpeting was criminally ugly, stain-mottled and worn thin in the heavily trafficked spots. There was a crowd milling around a table set with cheap hors d'oeuvres, water pitchers, and coffee urns. It was a sea of flannel, glasses, and beards swarming around the free food as enthusiastically as the vultures I'd seen in the Okavango Delta. "Believe me," I said, "we are in the right place." On our way to the front of the room, we passed a young, skinny white guy with intense blue eyes and blonde eyebrows that disappeared into his face. He was wearing a red tracksuit and a white Kangol hat and was bent in ferocious attention over the glowing oracle of his iPad. Spotting us, he jumped out of his seat and gave me an awkward fist bump. "Word to your moms, Ozzel," he said. "Dr. Strauss, thanks for coming," I said, introducing him to Chloe. Everhard was just awarded the microbiology chair at the University of Bonn. Chloe and I walked on. "You see why I need you now?" I said, gesturing at the rows of World of Warcraft diehards we passed. "These guys are all beyond brilliant, but as you can see, PR is not their strong suit. That's why it's so important that you agreed to come with me." "And I thought you wanted me for my mind," Chloe said, smiling. "Give me the tape, Oz. The audiovisual is in operating order," said a fresh-faced kid dressed as though he were ready for a rodeo. His shoulders were hunched up to his ears, and his long arms dangled stiffly at his sides. He turned and sniffed loudly at Chloe's hair. "Your hair smells good," he said in a too loud voice, half oaky and half machine, as if Roby the robot had grown up in a Steinbeck novel. Jonathan, thanks, man. Here you go. I handed him the tape and ushered Chloe in. Don't mind him. That was Jonathan Moore. He, an autistic savant and one of the biggest agricultural engineers in the world. He's a renowned animal communicator. He was one of my first contacts when I started researching HAC. He helped me work with Attila. I had rolled the dice and told Chloe about Attila on our flight. I even showed her my wallet pictures. She said she thought I was brave for having rescued him, so she seemed cool with it. Go figure. Chapter 36. Some minutes later, I found myself on the stage, tapping the podium microphone. The feedback squealed and settled down. The murmuring room went silent, and all heads swiveled in my direction. Without further ado, folks, I said, nodding to Jonathan, who gave me a thumbs up by the projector. This is what is happening in Africa. It speaks for itself. I recorded this 2 days ago in the Okavango Delta in Botswana. I stepped back into the dark to watch the room watch the video. I was pleased to see that they were stunned. When the male lions' heads appeared in the field, a wave of whispers rose up in the room. These were some very smart folks, and I'd definitely gotten their attention. When Jonathan turned the lights back on, the room full of whispers broke into a full blast cacophony of 40 people trying to shout over each other all at once. Come on, folks, I called over the din as I waved the legal tablet in my hand. Legal tablet. And stepped up to the microphone. My meeting with the senator is only a few hours away. His first question is going to be, why is this happening? We have proof not only of this inexplicable hyperaggression behavior in lions, but also of an unprecedented change in their social behavior. We need to come up with some workable theories. How can this be, Oz? My former evolutionary biology professor, Gail Quinn, said. How can this have happened overnight? I don't know, Gail, I said. That's what I called you all here to try to help me figure out. My best guess so far is that it may be some sort of radical new adaptive zone. I'm thinking that there may be a dramatic change in the environment that for some reason we haven't been able to pick up on yet. Which aspect of the environment is changing, though? Somebody said. My money is on a viral agent, Oz, Elbert Strauss said. As I said before, these behaviors, especially the hyperaggression, are symptomatic of rabies. I'm not saying it is rabies, but it may be some virus that attacks the nervous system. I considered that, I said. But for one thing, rabies is transmitted from animal to animal through bodily fluids. That might explain what's going on in the wild, but in the recent LA lion attack and escape, the lions were completely isolated. Assuming that its incident has anything to do with this, someone said. That's right. Assuming it is, though, bear with me. How could isolated zoo animals have been affected? It could be airborne, Strauss pointed out, or carried by parasites, mosquitoes, fleas. He ticked off possibilities on his fingers. The meat they were feeding the lions in the zoo could have been infected. You name it, many possibilities. Let me throw out another argument against the virus theory, I said. An animal with rabies or similar diseases that attack the nervous system usually exhibits more symptoms than hyperaggressive behavior. Erratic muscle movement, mange, dermal lesions, hydrophobia. The lions that killed my friend looked quite healthy to me, physically at least. And the zoo's lions in California weren't displaying any physical symptoms either. I certainly wouldn't rule out a virus at this point, but it would have to be one we've never seen before. Has there been an autopsy of any of these animals? Asked Dr. Quinn. No, I said. The African authorities won't allow it. That's one of the first things I'm going to bring up with the senator. What about an autopsy on the zoo lions in LA? Somebody shouted. Good question, I said. If it's not a virus, then we may be talking about a cascade change in the environment, said Alice Boyd, a regal, silver-haired septuagenarian, a MacArthur Fellow from the University of Washington. Have you thought about solar flares? A geomagnetic reversal. I'm only thinking of the way that animal behavior sometimes changes rapidly before a major geological event. Earthquakes, tsunamis, maybe something's coming. A cosmic event that these animals are somehow sensing. Good point, I said, dashing it down on my tablet. I liked the idea of geomagnetic reversal. Well, actually, I hated it. As scary as it was scary as hell, but I liked it as a suggestion. Geological data shows us that every once in a while, the Earth's magnetic field reverses itself. Basically, after such an event, your compass needle will point south, where before it had pointed north. These switches seem to be random as far as we can tell. There's a lot of disagreement about how long these shifts last. Recent evidence from the USGS suggests that one of these shifts in the past lasted only 4 years. But a geomagnetic shift's potential effect on the biosphere is unknown, for the simple reason that it has never happened in human memory. Are you people this stupid? Someone shouted in the murmuring crowd. I looked. It was a lean, handsome young man I didn't know. He was the only person in the room wearing a suit. Those lions could have been trained by Siegfried and Roy. This footage doesn't prove a thing. There was a hush in the crowd, followed by the buzzing can opener hum of an electric wheelchair. I nodded at Charles Grow, as he piloted his I-bought wheelchair down the ballroom's center aisle. Although he was effectively retired these days, unfortunately. 3 years ago, he was suddenly attacked by a 400-pound gorilla whom he had known and worked with for 10 years. The ape broke all the bones in his face and tore away his nose, lips, and one of his ears, one of his eyes, and one of his hands. Yikes. He also took off Grow's right leg from the knee down. The primatologist stopped in front of the handsome skeptic. The tape is as real as my face, he said. I smiled in relief as the group continued debating among themselves. A terrific dynamic was forming now. What had once been mere tolerance of my HAC obsession by my friends and colleagues had now suddenly become scientific respect. The debate was shifting from the question of whether something was happening to the more important questions of why it was happening and how to fix it. But what Alice Boyd had said about geomagnetic shifts stuck with me. It lodged itself in the back of my mind and refused to go away. I had a feeling she was barking up the right tree. It wasn't exactly the suggestion of a geomagnetic shift affecting the biosphere in unforeseen ways, as it was the general direction of her thinking, a massive but invisible change in the environment that animals could sense, but we could not. Do you remember the Indian Ocean tsunami? Yes, we live in interesting times. As the wars and natural disasters fall one upon another like hard rain, they get buried in the quickly overlapping layers of mud in our terrible memories. Which catastrophe was that? December 26, 2004. the giant tsunami that ripped across the Indian Ocean from the epicenter of a 9.0 magnitude earthquake off the coast of Sumatra, drowning more than 200,000 people in Indonesia, Sri Lanka, India, and Thailand. I was in Iraq at the time. I remember crowding around a cheap little TV in our base camp watching the news. I remember how I was struck when I heard that in Sri Lanka, a full day before the first wave hit, the animals began to disappear inland. Birds, lizards, snakes, mongoose, gone. Elephants ran for higher ground. Dogs refused to go outside. Flamingos abandoned their low-lying breeding areas. Although the tsunami killed hundreds of thousands of people, relatively few animals were reported dead. Animals' more acute hearing and other senses might have enabled them to hear or feel the Earth's vibration, tipping them off to the approaching disaster long before humans realized what was going on. The animals knew something bad was up. They could feel the vibrations, feel it in their bones. The people, though, oblivious. Even when the sea mysteriously retreated by 1.5 miles, gathering itself for the 80-foot wave that followed, what did they do? The children went down to the exposed ocean floor to gather seashells. And that's where we're going to stop for today. Interesting, the idea of what and why and how to stop it. All very interesting. All right, you guys. Oops, not this side. We saw that side. You want this side. If you have not, go ahead and please subscribe to the channel. And if you click that bell tab, you will get a notification every time a new video is posted. I hope you have a wonderful day. We'll find out what is happening with the meeting in our next video, and I will see you.